So I'm going to do the screen sharing myself today, and so hope that won't be too jerky. It'll be fine, I think. I'll start by, there's Liam. I don't know whether Liam would like to do the screen sharing. To the Blessed One, the Lord who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teachings so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. If you could go to page 129. $128, sorry. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Dhammam saranam gacchāmi, Sangham saranam gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchāmi. Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapada Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapada Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame Sumi Chachara Veramani Sikkhapada Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada Veramani Sikkhapada Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Suram Nirayamajja Pramaditama Veramani Sikkhapada Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhapadani, silena sukhating yanti, silena bhoga sampada, silena nibhuting yanti, Tasma silang visodaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore let virtue be purified.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Liam. Although my meditation is about letting go, we inevitably begin our meditation by doing something. It seems that we can't avoid it. Somehow we sit down, in this case, sitting, and we determine to practice meditation for a period of time. And so whatever that means to us, we begin by doing that thing. Yet the purpose of meditation is to let go, which is the opposite of doing or trying to get something, to get rid of anything. It's not like that. Letting go isn't that. So it's as though we begin by doing, but our direction of travel is to let go, to relinquish, to stop doing, simply to notice, to be present. So we begin by establishing an upright posture. It seems like we're doing that, but we remind ourselves that the upright posture is the natural posture of samadhi. That as the mind calms down, the posture finds itself. It discovers an upright and balanced posture. It's not something that's forced or made to happen. Yet initially, we decide, yes, I will establish an upright posture. We begin that way. And then we remember, oh yes, this is the natural posture of the samadhi mind, the mind that's concentrated. simple, upright, balanced posture. But the mind, in a sense, inclines towards, and the body follows. It's not force, but simply a natural posture that we can relax into. So it might take a little journey in order to discover that, to find that out. And it seems that way, whatever we turn our minds towards. We notice the sensations in the body. It seems like a deliberate act, yet the sensations come to us. They're already there. They present themselves to us. To be noticed. Discover, it's like a discovery of the sensations of the body. It's like a journey of discovery. Rather than a doing activity. And as we discover the breath in the same way, there it is. And as someone who sets out on a journey of discovery, then to explore and experience, they don't set out to interfere and control, but to explore and experience. So this is what mindfulness is like. When we explore and experience, we have to deliberately let go of the doing, grasping mind. We're not trying to get anything or get rid of anything. If we were, we'd simply be entangling ourselves more in the web. But we're letting go, disentangling, rather than struggling and fighting with. We're stopping the struggle. We're letting things be, simply observing them, acknowledging them, letting them in. not resisting. And observing them as they are. As the body calms down, so does the mind. Perhaps the calming of the mind might appear not to be calm, because when we start to notice the mind, it seems very busy. But we can let it be and let it calm down in its own time. It will. There's no rush. We're not following after, not buying into anything that the mind presents itself to us. We don't add fuel to the fire, and it naturally calms down. As we can unclench the muscles of the body when we notice that they're tense, so we can unclench the tightness with which we hold thoughts and ideas and mental states, and let them go too. It's the mind's nature to be obsessed. It's what we do, the mind does. And so when obsessive thoughts arise, they seem to have a life of their own. They seem to be trapped in them. Yeah. So there's a possibility of breaking the chain of obsessive thinking. Simply say no. You can say no. I see. If you can see the causal chain, how one leads to another, just stop. You don't really need to understand how you got here. You don't have to remember or analyze. Just let go. Maybe it helps to think there's nothing I need to fix, no problem I need to solve. Just so that's not the purpose of meditation. That's simply to notice and accept that's how it is. It's like this, but then we don't need to be a victim of conditionality. We don't have to be trapped in obsessive thought. It's okay to let it go. As we begin to calm down, we might notice things in terms of characteristics such as discomfort. This is physical discomfort. So we notice that what we might think of as unsatisfactoriness or dukkha, the body's like this. It's never comfortable. It's always itching. There's always something. It's not as it should be. Or the mind, it's not as we'd like it. Characteristic of dukkha. We're seeing it in terms of characteristic, the nature of the mind and body, rather than the content. It doesn't matter what the content is. There's a commonality in the experience. But it's unsatisfactory. We might also notice its changing nature. Why is that significant? Simply it's our desire to control and fix. It's our resistance to change. It's actually out of control. Nothing's fixable. You can notice this characteristic of change or uncertainty. We might notice characteristic of not self, sense of who's trying to control, who's experiencing. This assumption, an underlying assumption that we take for granted of me and my experience. Is that real? Is that true? Is that really how it is? Or are you just part of the experience? There's no separate you, simply the experience. The separation is it's just a habit. It's just a delusion, something that we perhaps would like to be separate. We'd like to be the center of the universe. We can let that go. It's an effort. It's stressful. Why would you? Create this stress with a me and an other. Just a willingness to ask that question, are you sure? It shouldn't be like this. I ought to be able to get it fixed. My responsibility. Are you sure? When we let go, there's a disentangling, an unraveling of the knots. So I'll say one or two things and hopefully lead to a discussion. A few questions maybe. I suppose what I always tend to do is when I lead these sessions is to talk about meditation a bit, and then the theme that tends to come out of the meditation. And what came up during the meditation came to me was to mention the three characteristics, how they, when the mind calms down, particularly an opportunity to reflect on the three characteristics. Of course, the opportunity to reflect in the three is always there. It doesn't matter about the mind having to calm down. It's simply that the calmer the mind is, the more clarity, and so that bit there's more depth and perhaps more penetration in the reflection that comes from the mind when it's calmed down. So often many people will calm the mind, begin their meditation with calming, the intention of calming, and then when the mind feels calm enough to reflect, and it's not a very scientific thing where you can say the question is always, is my mind calm enough? And so that's not really helpful in a way, because as I said, we can always reflect all the time. We don't have to calm the mind, we don't have to be in meditation. And if we have this idea of, why I can't reflect on the three characteristics until my mind's calm enough, we'll never know when that is, because when is it ever? How do we ever know? What is calm enough? That could be a source of doubt or confusion. So it's not really worth thinking about when is my mind calm enough. It's just to take the opportunity when it presents itself to you that the mind seems that it is possible to turn towards reflecting on the characteristics of your experience rather than the content. And we can get a normal way of living is to give a lot of importance to the content. So the idea, the thought, it seems important. We think we've got to, often, let's say, taking a problem, the problem presents itself to the mind, we think we have to find a solution. This is the conditioned process. Our conditioning is look for a problem to fix. This could be our habit, tendency. And so this stepping back of mindfulness is to recognize it's a habit of the mind, rather than to get caught up in believing that this is a problem I've got to fix. Then off you go, trying to fix it. Recognize this mental state of looking for a problem to fix, and then finding one and being happy, as though that would bring us happiness. Because in a sense, it brings us happiness because the mind is obsessed with finding problems to fix. And when it's got a problem, it's happy, but not for long, because it doesn't know how to fix the problem. So the happiness doesn't last, does it? Now, this is dukkha. It's not difficult to just simply to turn our mind around, as though looking at it from the other side and think, this is dukkha. It's rather than following the conditionality of the mind that says, fix the problem, we turn it back and say, this is dukkha. This is what it's like to live in a mind which is always looking for a problem to fix. How does that feel? It feels like this. It's not satisfactory, because there's no end to it, is there? There'll always be a problem to fix. If you look for one, you'll always find one, and you can never. Even if you found the solution, it wouldn't be if it were possible. You'd always look for another problem to fix. So there's no end to this. This is samsara. This is a wheel of life. You just keep pushing it round. It's life. If this is your life, what's the meaning of that? What's the point of it all? You can see dukkha in that, can't you? When you turn it around and look at it. And so this is what I mean by it, using the calm, the opportunity that calm brings, to turn around and just see, this is the nature of the mind. What is the nature of the mind? It's unsatisfactory. I know the Buddha's putting up this little signpost of saying, look here, look in the direction of dukkha. That's where you'll understand the truth. Because otherwise we look in the direction of sukha, the opposite, happiness. We follow our desire to fix the problem, thinking, when I fix this problem, I'll be happy forever. I know you might say, no, of course, that's ridiculous, yet the fundamental assumption of the problem-solving mind is that we'll fix the problem forever. Otherwise, if we really saw it clearly, we wouldn't bother, would we? Because we'd know it wasn't possible. We'd know it's just a treadmill. We wouldn't do it. We'd give it up. We'd let it go, because it's just entangling of the mind. So this is what happens. You reflect on dukkha. This is dukkha. This is unsatisfactory. You can see, well, then why would you? Why? It's challenges our conditioning, and that's why I said it's okay. The mind that's obsessed, it's a natural thing for the mind to be obsessed, but it's okay to say no, to stop. Because it won't, it doesn't bring happiness. It won't. It can't. You might even be obsessed with Buddhism. It doesn't matter what you're obsessed with. It won't bring you happiness. The obsessive mind, if you're obsessed with Buddhism, then you won't derive any real happiness or freedom from it. because it will be something you're trying to do to get something out of. You want to become something, like a good Buddhist, or try to become wise. You want to get loving kindness or whatever it is. It won't lead you to happiness because you're still following the grasping mind. You're still trapped in the entanglement of the grasping mind. You've just transferred it towards Buddhism. It seems like doing all this good stuff, trying to even be nice to people. But it's still, you're doing it to get something, to get away from something. There's still the entanglement of self in there. It's just another obsession, can be like a hobby, can't it? Or it might be about trying to impress people. Like I'm a really good Buddhist. Or I keep my sila as best as anyone. I don't think anyone could keep sila better than me. There's just a big sort of sense of ego about that, isn't there? So reflecting on taking the opportunity when we meditate to turn around, go round, or go inside, or turn the conditioning inside out. Take a look on the inside. It's a path of discovery. What is this? What is this about? What am I doing here? What is this? It's the obsessed mind. What am I obsessed about? Oh, I'm trying to get this, trying to get rid of that. Oh, and is that going to bring happiness? No, it's not. Oh, it's dukkha. There we are. First noble truth. It's there all the time. When I've heard sometimes people say, "Oh, I can't meditate." Well, you can meditate because if that thought, "I can't meditate," comes up, that's dukkha. That's meditation. To see that, to realize that dukkha in this thought moment of "I can't meditate," that's what meditation is. This is insight meditation, that realization of truth. Oh, it's dukkha. It's unsatisfactory. You realize there's no such thing as can't meditate. If you use the reflective mind, you'll see what's that about? Where's that come from? Who can't meditate? What's this meditation anyway? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to get? What am I saying it should be like? Who says that? Where's that come from? It's all uncertain. But what you can know is dukkha. That's real. You can understand that. That's the commonality of our experience. And like within anicca, the impermanence, because the point of anicca is, of course, yes, things are uncertain and changing, but it's because these things point towards their opposite. Like, it's because we want permanent happiness, and that's not possible. That's dukkha. If we want permanent happiness, it means we don't want to accept change. It's because we're resistant to change. We create suffering out of it. When we can accept change, we can embrace change. Nothing can trouble us. There's nothing that can create suffering out, because whatever it is, it's just another moment, a new moment. Whether we wanted it, the sense of I want it to be like this, I don't want it to be like that. That's dukkha. But the moment is whatever it is. It's always new. Now, if we embrace the present moment well, we embrace anicca. It's not a threat. It's the way things are. And in the third characteristic of not self is the most difficult, if you like, to understand, because this is what we're most attached to, the sense of self. And so we feel under threat. This sense of self feels under threat. Say not self. Even, that's being polite, is not self, because sometimes people might say no self, and that's very threatening. And it's not like there's no self, but it's the it's the non. There's a suffering comes out of attaching to a sense of permanent identity. That's the point. The Buddha's only pointing out the anatta because it creates suffering. The opposite of anatta. Our attachment to a permanent self is a source of suffering because we personalize our moods, for example, our emotions, our thoughts, our people, the way we relate. We want it to be like this. We don't want it to be like that. But it's who I am. If I'm a success, that's who I am. If I'm a failure, that's who I am. That's a source of suffering because if you can't be a success forever. So if you're a success, well, just look at that's just a because failure hasn't happened yet. If you're a failure, well, that's just because success hasn't happened yet. It's just when we personalize, we add a personality to our experience, and we try to lock inevitably that ignorance. What we call it ignorance. Or delusion. We try to lock. When we own something, we try to lock into something that's fixed and permanent because we don't want it to change. We want it to be like, even if we don't like who we are, at least it's who we are. It's what we've got. Surprisingly, not liking who we are, we'd still rather have the person we don't like. We'd still rather be somebody we don't like than not be anyone at all. That's the amazing thing. Because that's so threatening, isn't it? That's if we have no sense of self, well, we think, oh, that would be terrible. And we have a sense of self. It's just this not attaching a sense of permanence to it. It's continually changing. And so really, it's not a threat, this idea of not self. It's simply pointing to a truth, a reality. This, whatever we hold on to and call me and mine, it's like building a building on sand. As soon as the sea comes in, it's washed away. Isn't it like a sandcastle? And the tide comes in, it's washed away. Here we are. It's a perfect sandcastle. Put a flag in it, but the tide comes in, it's washed away. It's inevitable. And so that's the source of self. If we attach to that sense of self-identity, then we create suffering. But there is a natural sense of self. We do have if you prick yourself with a pin, it hurts. You go, ow, just the same, whether you attach to the sense of self or not. This pain happens, and if you poke yourself here, you feel it, and that is a sense of self, isn't it? The physical body. You wake up in the morning, look in the mirror. There is a sense of self that you have to take ownership of the body. You have to do necessary things to keep it healthy, to keep it clean, to feed it, look after it. You have to nurture the mind, to maintain a healthy balance of physical and mental activity. You have to look after this physical, mental body. There's a sense of self. Without that, perhaps we wouldn't bother. We just lie down the gutter. I don't know. But there's a beauty to being in the present moment, awake and aware with this physical and mental form. But if we attach to an I, sense of permanence, sense of I, an unchanging identity, then we're going to create suffering, because it's not like that. It's a continually changing. It's more like a process than a. And I'm just reminded of something I heard somebody talking about waves on a radio program, and he was describing, or maybe it was on the television, can't remember. He was describing waves, an expert on waves, and he was saying how waves are like a process. Like a process. But the wave, as it passes over the ocean, is like a process. The ocean's not going anywhere, but the wave continues across the ocean. And if it hits a fixed, immovable object, it bounces back again. Off it goes back in the other direction. It doesn't stop. It doesn't lose its energy. It simply rebounds and goes backwards in the other direction. But if it reaches the shore, at the seashore, then it dissipates its energy. It flows in many ways, in sound, in energy, impact on the rocks, on the sand. There's this roar and rush. You can hear it when you get to the sea, and that's the sound of waves exhausting their energy. They're following their natural course. They don't come back. They don't rebound. They don't come back. They're finished. They come to an end. And it's like that. It seems to me, and I think he mentioned the connection with the human experience. Maybe there was a similarity. I'm not quite sure how strongly he made the connection, but did mention something like that. And I reflected on this, and I thought that's really interesting, because when we have a solid sense of self, it's like the waves hitting something solid. They go back, and off they go in the other direction. They never come to an end. But if we let go of that solid sense of self, then the waves can reach the shore, and they can just exhaust themselves and free them, then come to an end. The energy can be dissipated and come to an end. It's like, maybe that's a simile for Nibbana. Like you've got a solid sense of self, and we just keep on bouncing these waves, and there's nothing done, nothing's finished. But when we can let go completely, it's like the wave can exhaust itself on the shore, completely expend its energy. It doesn't come back. It doesn't rebound. It's finished. It comes to an end. Interesting thought. Anyway, that seemed interesting to me, probably not to you. Anyway, if anyone has any questions and reflections, then please feel free to unmute and ask them, or anyone from the room. So,
we actually use similar analogy in schools.
Yeah.
Small children,
telling them.
Wait a minute, I'll just move the microphone a bit more so you. Yeah.
And they seem to understand it quite well, telling them that we are like waves, we are a pattern in life, and that the water really does not belong to the wave. Thoughts, emotions, sensations does not belong to the wave. The wave is just a pattern. And besides, there are no real boundaries between waves. And there is also underneath a current which keeps feeding back and forth with the wave. And when the wave falls back into the ocean, it doesn't just disappears. It might come up later on as something else, depending on circumstances. It has got a sense of direction, it has got an energy, and I tell them, and that is a simile for rebirth as well. There is nothing really that is reborn, but that energy will come up again. They seem to understand it quite well, actually. They like it.
It's a good simile, but it's interesting that reflection on when it gets to the shore, it doesn't bounce back.
Yeah.
This scientist who'd done the research on waves, he'd actually monitored, he said, and why not believe? I don't know if I believe, but he said that a wave that starts out from the Antarctic Ocean can be monitored at the Arctic Ocean. At the end, right up to the Arctic, waves can pass right, if they don't hit anything along the way, can pass right across the globe from one side of from the south to the furthest north, right up the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean. And because he monitored, he could tracked. It seems beyond me, but he said, this scientist had this said that waves, they don't lose it. They don't. If there's nothing impacts them, there's nothing. Of course, they're generated by wind and initially, but once they're in motion, there's nothing. If there's nothing to stop them, they'll carry on. And he reckoned to have been able to record waves the whole from one ocean, from the south to the very north of the hemispheres.
It's impressive.
Incredible. Well, it's an amazing thought, but that simile is interesting, isn't it? To connect that with rebirth. Yeah. But that possibility of then, if it reaches the shore, it's finished. It expends its energy and then it doesn't rebound, doesn't come. I'm sure if you put it into Google, you'll find either the radio program or the television program I'm talking about. It wasn't all that long ago. Has anyone got anything? Oh, somebody's got a hand up. Will, please. You can't unmute yourself. Oh dear. This is where my technical prowess, or maybe Liam's got the technical prowess to enable people to unmute. Well, I think I might have done it.
Yes, there we are.
Okay.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you for your guidance tonight and in the talk. My question was just around generosity. And I've noticed that I find it one of the more challenging aspects, certainly in terms of being generous with my time. It sort of brings up a lot of thoughts about when's the right time, am I committing too much, responsibilities involved, and I just find it, there's a lot of thoughts come up and I end up preferring just to avoid it a little bit, to have that real strong commitment for generous causes. So I was just wondering how you've approached generosity in your practice.
Did you say about your time? generosity with your time?
Yeah, so I've noticed that I'm happy to sort of give financial support, for example, but as I've reflected on that, I've found it's more of an avoidance of really committing something. And when my time is under threat, that's when I really feel quite precious about my personal time. Something's really being taken away from me, and I find I consider things really carefully. As soon as someone asks for my time, I really don't like to give it up, and I'd rather just give people money or something else. And that's interesting because there isn't quite that connection there. It's a bit of a, it feels like a little bit of an avoidance to being something I could really commit to. So I'm just wondering what that's about. It feels like a real opportunity there, a real opportunity to learn and something I'm exploring, but I've just noticed that for myself.
Yeah, well, your time is very important, isn't it? Because we also need our own time to be on with ourselves and our families and our own, perhaps our responsibilities. So that is quite limited, isn't it? Maybe I can understand you feeling that way. But on the other hand, every moment, even when we're, say, giving our time to some early morning meditation, is a kind of act of generosity to ourselves, isn't it? So you could look at every moment of your waking life as an opportunity to give your time, even if it's not giving it to somebody else. You can be giving it to yourself and in your own practice, the time to perhaps walk in the garden or to simply stand still for a moment is a generous act. And so, but yes, I think generosity with our time is really interesting, isn't it? To be generous. But we need to think to include ourselves in that generosity. Yeah.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks.
I notice that manifests in our relationships with other people. How we can be attentive and listen, for example. That's a kind of being generous with our time, because we might be too busy. We might think that person's interrupting me. I've got other things to do. And then that's not being very generous with our time. So giving up that moment to the person in that relationship, that person who's speaking or wanting to speak to you, and giving your full attention to them, that's a challenge. And that's a kind of generosity with your time. Yeah, that's fine. I find that challenging, because I'm just about to send this email. If only give me the chance to write a few, just to finish that sentence. But it's quite difficult to give your full attention to the person at the moment, in that moment, and just leave it to one side, because after all, it can always come back to that. If it is just about writing the last sentence or signing your name, then you'll be able to do that afterwards. You can, when you've spoken and given your time to the other person. I find that it's quite challenging. I have to work on it too. Is anyone else got any reflections or questions?
If I can say something, it seems to me that it is also a matter of a little wisdom and setting boundaries, I remember here and there, even the Buddha sometimes took off into the forest on his own and said enough, because we can become a something that people hang on to when that might not be necessarily a good thing. And so, in a way, as long as the heart is clear of me, then it will respond in a wise way, probably. It should be apparent to ourselves as well when there is that me there saying, my time, who is that me? Anyway, it is a balancing act, I would say.
We have to look. It reminds me. I used to use the simile of spreading ourselves too thinly. And I used to try to please people too much. And this is when working. In work, when you do feel like that's what you're supposed to be trying to please other people quite a lot of the time, but. Then you end up not pleasing anyone. So I think we can make the mistake of blaming other people for taking up our time. It's not their fault. It's for us to choose how we use our time and how we spend it. So if we need to find, that it's something that I had to learn was the self-confidence. It doesn't come naturally, I think. There's a confidence to bring conversations to an end and things like that. That can be done too. Madeline.
I was just going to say on the question of the paramita of dana, I've just been in a small group. We've just been recently reading a sutta on merit. And dana is one of the greatest ways that we can accumulate merit that has some way of affecting our bad karma in the future. So that if we just attend to kindness and offering dana and generosity, we accumulate a lot of merit that we can bring into our next life. It's obviously when we do offer dana, we don't think, oh, this is going to bring us merit. That kind of negates the whole thing. But the liberal and generous offering of any sort of dana accumulates, according to this sutta, accumulates a lot of merit for us that works very well to help mitigate some of the bad karma we might have accumulated through our lives.
That's interesting. I was reminded of the occasion when a couple came to the Buddha, the man and wife. They were very devoted to each other. I don't know if this is the sutta you're referring to, Bryn, probably a different one. And they were very devoted, and they came to the Buddha and they said, we want to be born together. When we die, we want to go to the same place so that we can continue to be married, if you like, to be together. So how can we do that? How can we ensure that when we're reborn, we're reborn in the same realm, same condition? And he said, if you have equal merit, then you will have an equal rebirth. You will, if you want to be born together, then you should act with equal generosity. Then if you accumulate the merit, that you will be born in the same realm together. It was really interesting. It's really rather touching that he didn't just dismiss that. Which you could think of as being rather trivial. So, for goodness sake, why do you want to be reborn? Why wouldn't you want to just put put it to end, bring it to an end. But it was rather, I thought it was a rather touching response. It's in line with what you're saying about how the accumulation of, through generosity, accumulation of merit can bring the conditions for future rebirth. But this is, if that's what you want, and but it's not the goal of Buddhism to be born in a heaven world or to be reborn at all. So, whilst, but on the other hand, it can be it might not be that we get enlightened in this life, so it can be quite useful to have accumulate some merit and then have a favourable rebirth. So it might be a useful insurance policy.
There is the balancing act of the dedication of merit, so that
that's right. Yes.
Yes.
Indeed, we can dedicate it to others. That's right.
Yes, but the thing is not to look at it like that, as it's an insurance policy. You have to give freely. If you kind of give and think, oh, this is going to help me in the next life. No, that doesn't work like that. You have to simply give it unconsciously and freely, open-heartedly and generously.
Yeah, or unconditionally. So you're not trying to
unconditionally.
Yeah. That's right. Yes. Yeah, it bears much more merit that way. Otherwise, you diminish the merit. Yeah, it's true now. But anyhow, I still think it's okay to get enlightened in this life if the opportunity arises. It's good enough. But
good luck with that.
Yeah, well, that merit accumulation, we don't know for how many lives we've been practicing. We don't know how much merit we've accumulated. This might be good enough. And anyway, in this life, we can still be generous and it will have an immediate benefit. It's not just about in a future life. So, whatever, we should always, it's also nice, isn't it, after all, it leads to happiness. The accumulation of doing something which is meritorious brings immediate happiness. That's the immediate, isn't it? It has an immediate result, not just a result in the future. Stephen?
Well, you've just said what I was going to say, actually, Martin, which is that merit bears fruit in this life. It's not really just a question of, will you be reborn, or what fruit will you have in a future life? And you've just touched on that.
Yeah. So thank you very much for everyone who's joined us and for your questions, and hopefully you found that this evening useful. And if you could track down the closing homage, Liam.
Is it worth mentioning that there's not a class for the next 2 weeks?
There isn't a class for the next 2 weeks? Yes. I need to mention that because of 2 bank holiday Mondays. So I think we're on page 21.
21, recollection of the Buddha.
Closing homage.
16, closing homage.
Yes.
Oh, we're not on page 16. What page are we on? I'm not quite sure what page we're on.
Did you want the close? Do you want the evening
homage,
closing?
the evening chanting.
Yeah, that's the evening
That's what we're
chanting.
doing.
Yeah, is that the one you want?
Yep. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Well, go well, everyone. Hope that you enjoy your bank holiday weekends and want to celebrate it in the way that you'd like and enjoy most. And we'll see you after in a couple of weeks.
In 3 weeks.
3 weeks' time. Yeah.